Hi, welcome to Re-Envision Health Podcast, where we explore the intersection of health, technology, and work. I'm the host, Sylvia Doss, and today we'll be speaking with Marissa Lavalette. Marissa is a Bay Area-based yoga teacher and yoga teacher trainer with clients in both the private and the workplace space. She's the founder of the online women's wellness community and podcast, Attune and Align. Women work with Marissa either one-on-one or in her monthly membership to attune to the calling of their heart and align their lives accordingly through yoga, healthy eating, and career transitions. Marissa defines herself as wanting to be your number one cheerleader and helping you share your unique gifts and talents in a world that needs you to shine your light right now. Welcome, Marissa, to Re-Envision Health.
Sylvia, thank you so much for having me today.
You know, I invited you today to share your thoughts on yoga, not only in a private space, such as going to your local yoga studio or Zoom studio as they are right now, but to also explore yoga in the workplace. Many companies offer yoga classes, and it always seemed to me that employees, they get that yoga can be very helpful to them, but engaging with it at work just may feel sort of odd. So we'll get into all of that today. First, tell me about your work.
Well, first of all, thank you for such a kind introduction. I really appreciated that. Yeah, I'm just so happy and excited to be here today to speak on your podcast from the perspective of a yoga teacher. And, for the modern yoga teacher nowadays, that actually means a person who wears very many hats. It's not like thousands of years ago where yoga teachers were pretty much assigned to a village or town, for example. And it was more like the yoga teacher was very stationary in their location. And then the students would come and sit with the teacher to learn. Now, and it's a little bit different, with everything we've been dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, but really a yoga teacher in the modern context is someone who commutes a lot, honestly, because you're either in your car or on your bicycle, or here in San Francisco, you're on Muni, because you're going to the one studio in the morning, then you're going across town, or you're going over the Golden Gate Bridge or over the Bay Bridge to your one-on-one client. Then you're commuting back into the city for your corporate class in the afternoon. And then, like so many urban yoga teachers, from there, you have to race over and get in time for your 6:15 p.m. public studio class again. So the reason that I paint such a lively picture of the modern commuting yoga teacher is I think that there is, in the media, a little bit of a disconnect between the stereotypical idea of what people think yoga teachers do all day long versus what we actually do all day long. And I think on the first hand, maybe people are imagining yoga teachers, burning sage in their home and meditating with their crystals and journaling for 2.5 hours and then standing on our heads for 30 minutes. And, as much as we try to do those things every day, it's not happening for 4.5 hours of protracted practice. Then on the other hand, you have those modern realities of what are some of the mundane challenges in delivering the ancient practice set against the restraints of the modern lifestyle. So
that's really
just right
interesting.
There,
yeah.
There's a lot to unpack.
And speaking of the commuting, for those who don't live in the Bay Area, that commuting can take quite a while and take you through a number of stressors. And to be able to show up at class still, ready to go and really setting an example for the people who are there. So is this what you thought it was going to be like when you got into this? Because I'm just interested in what inspired you and really what keeps inspiring you.
That's a really fair question. And, everyone's story is different about how they become a yoga teacher. The way that I came into it was, and for me, I think it was a good thing. When I started teaching yoga, it was very much a part-time thing. Like, I had a full-time 9 to 5. I've told you before, Sylvia, I was a middle school Spanish teacher for 8 years. And, I had my teacher schedule. And for many years, nights and weekends, I went through the whole yoga teacher training process, where if you have ever gone through that or have had someone in your life go through the yoga teacher training process, it feels like you're studying for your medical boards, or like the way we studied together in nutrition school, Sylvia. My husband would be like, "Are you not done with that yet?" I'm like, "I'm on a lifelong journey of discovering my Dharma. It never ends." But anyway, I know I'm going off a little bit on a tangent.
Well, actually,
here.
I want to know, I'd like you to add a little bit more about what that training is like, because I actually looked into it recently. And I mean, it's in depth. And why is that? What are yoga teachers bringing to us that we have no idea of, because we don't have any idea of what they have to do to get there?
Yeah, and I know I'm being like playfully tongue-in-cheek here, like, oh, it would never end, and when would all the training stop?
No, it's a lot of training.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best part of it, right? Because it's a good sign for humanity. It shows that there are still, and not just yoga, but in different pockets of interest, there are still groups of people who are really holding new students or new aspirants to really high standards. And when it comes to the path of becoming a yoga teacher trainer, I would say for most people that looks like enrolling in a 200-hour yoga teacher training program. And, one really popular format for that, it's like a 3-month or, a 2-month intensive, or I remember I did the 12 consecutive weekends. So I didn't see my husband for 12 Saturdays and Sundays in a row. And this was all while I was teaching my Spanish classes during the day to 6th graders. And then, as if that wasn't enough, right? Then it would be, they give you homework. It's a ton of homework. And so everything you've heard, Sylvia, is true. I mean, and you get these manuals that they weigh, 15 pounds a piece, because you have your anatomy manual, you have your philosophy manuals and the ancient texts and the Yoga Sutras and the Upanishads. And depending on who your teacher is, they might throw in some additional like mythology texts and the Bhagavad Gita. And obviously that was my favorite part. And then there's a whole manual on teaching skills. And then there's a whole manual on how to navigate the business of yoga as a modern practitioner. And so, I would come home Sunday night, and then my husband would be like, "Oh, okay, you're done till next weekend." And I said, "Well, no, now I have an assignment out of each manual." And I mean, I'm an academician, I'm someone, if I can dish out homework for 8 years, I have to be willing to take it too, right? So I loved doing those assignments, and and then you sit for a written exam that takes about 3 hours. Then you have your practical exam, and your teachers take notes and give you feedback while you're teaching. And so, Sylvia, that kind of just scratches the surface, because the 200-hour program is really accessible to sort of anyone who is a serious practitioner and wants to go deeper. But not everybody will teach after that program. So even after everything I've just explained to you, that doesn't necessarily lead to someone having their own class or teaching a class. There are no guarantees. Beyond that, you can take a 300-hour professional program. You can study one-on-one with your favorite teacher. I mean, it is, and I'll spare you because we can go into that for 2 more hours, but it's this whole subculture that I think people catch glimpses of, but it's its whole thing.
Yeah. And it's really awesome, because it really, I think, brings a lot to yoga. I moved to San Francisco 25 years ago, and I recall going to a yoga training locally here, and it was, I don't know, probably half men, half women. I was in my 30s. I was clearly the youngest person there. And so now when we look at yoga, it has this much different profile. I think, data shows that 85% or more are generally women in yoga.
Yep.
And
yep.
And depending on where you are, it may be very much younger women.
Yes, and I don't know the exact numbers, but it sounds like both of our research and experience aligns. Especially in my experience, because this beginning of my yoga teaching career has taken place mostly in San Francisco. So I would agree with you. I would say that the students who have come through my room have been about 90% female and quite young, ages 18 to 25, like barely out of college, right? Yeah. And that's not to say, I have some wonderful students, in their 40s, 50s, 60s who have been with me the whole time. But as you mentioned, in my experience for where I live in this urban environment, my students have been female and quite young.
So how does this translate when you are teaching, let's say, yoga in a corporate setting? Are you still seeing kind of this younger demographic?
What I notice, for example, public studio classes versus a corporate setting, is it's not quite as young. So you will get more people closer to middle age. I would say the representation of men is still quite similar. If it's a class of 20 women, then I'm only expecting 1 or 2 men. And it's not surprising if it's all women that day. I'd love to go into that a little more as to why we think that is.
Yeah, why? Because when we're looking at the workplace, I think there's this whole different set of factors. Mm-hmm. And when I started, going to yoga, and even, I did it kind of on and off for years, then I really got into it. And, when I really got into it, I could appreciate the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the physical aspects of it. Which I think is harder if you're not going frequently enough. But when we're talking about work, which tends to be stressful for most people, it seems like this would just be a really nice match with not just the stress, but just being able to move your body.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot for us to address right there. And it really depends on the company, the brand, the corporation. And I have heard all different things. One end of the spectrum, I have had corporate yoga students tell me, Marissa, this is the best thing, that in this case, the yoga was free for the employees. So this particular person was saying, what a perk of working here. How nice to know that I can leave my desk at 11:55, go downstairs, spend my lunch hour, and then, be back upstairs at 1:05. And that, not only is it free, there's no guilt involved because it's actually on the company calendar and it's available to everyone. So it's not like you're sneaking off campus to go to a yoga class. Like everyone knows it's happening. So I've heard that on the one hand. Some people are saying it's great. I've also had students say, maybe someone comes one time and then I don't see them for 3 months or whatever. They say, you know what, work has been so stressful and I'm not getting along with my teammates. The last thing I want to do is practice yoga alongside the people, who I'm having stress and tension with all day. And I can understand that too, because someone who studies and teaches about energy all day, it's like the way we choose to either mesh or overlap or keep our energies in our lives separate, it has an impact on, our overall sense of well-being. So I've heard, both ends of that spectrum and also in between. And as far as the men go, I feel like when I'm lucky enough to get a man to come to class, they almost start off by admitting that they almost didn't come to class. It's almost like I'm here, but I'm not sure that I should be. It's like that preemptive, like, I don't know if they're apologizing for being there because maybe it's a perception that it's, meant for the women. The number one thing the men tell me is, oh, I'm really stiff, I'm not flexible, I can't touch my toes, I'm a runner or a cyclist, so I have really tight hamstrings, and this is just going to be, a big fight with my body the whole time. And then, I always try to make some kind of joke to lighten it up, like,
Yeah.
well, if you had these long hamstrings, right, or you wouldn't be here in the first place, or why would your boss have hired me to be here today? So breaking the tension that way. But yeah, so when the few men actually do come, it's like almost they're preemptively apologizing for being there.
So if someone wanted to get started, and let's think about, in a workplace setting, or even, they'll have Zoom classes, workplace Zoom right now.
Yeah, I'm doing that. Yeah.
How do they get started in there? Because I've heard, I will tell you, my number one question that I get is, what do I wear? Generally from women. But, how do we get people to kind of tap into it?
It's so funny that you mentioned the clothing, because so much of the way modern yoga is depicted in the media is just through the crop tops and the tiny sports bras and the tight leggings. And when people ask me what to wear, yes, I wear yoga leggings. That's what I happen to like. I'm also a runner. So I actually like to run in the same pants that are actually made for yoga. I like them because they don't fall down. They stay with you. But I mean, what I basically tell people is just don't wear jeans. Anything other than jeans will work. Your pajamas will work.
Totally.
The thing is, so you want an elastic waistband. That is the key. So it doesn't have to be the latest brand's $150 pair of high-tech yoga pants. It's just something that you can sweat in that's going to be stretchy.
So how do we get people at work to get into yoga class?
Well, in terms of the clothing, if that's how specific we're being, they have to, they probably
That'll
need
be
to
the
get
first
changed.
thing.
They probably need to get changed. Yeah, well, so that'll involve them having either a locker room where they can get changed, or a restroom where they can get changed. And I know that this seemed like, I know I'm being hyper specific here, but the reason I'm being hyper specific about how to get employees into a yoga class is because it can be hard to find space. I've been really fortunate in corporate settings to teach for some of the larger brands who have full-blown gyms. So there's a gym space and there's a big 20-foot by 20-foot floor, and we can fit plenty of people in there. Some of these brands have budgets for blocks and straps and light weights and all the kinds of props you can think of, but that is not the case. Those are some larger companies. I've also taught in mostly in conference rooms with carpeting, and then everyone arrives 10 minutes early to class, and it becomes this community effort to stack the chairs and push the tables out of the way. And so I guess what I'm saying is that if it is a smaller company, or there's a smaller budget, for example, don't let that be the thing that deters you, right? Just trust that the universe is saying, this yoga teacher wants to be here, and these students want to be here, and the cosmos have intersected their life paths at this particular point in time. So if the only obstacle is moving some tables and chairs, then allow that to be part of the practice. And everyone just has to make sure they're there 10 minutes early to help.
What can people expect, or really what's the benefits of yoga when it really comes to stress and anxiety?
Wow. So I think it's so widely accepted in the mainstream. I think we're all on the same page now that a yoga and meditation practice can alleviate stress, can help you relax, can help you wind down and get ready for bed. Or if you're doing these practices in the morning, can help you gain balance and clarity for your day. Here's the thing that I am so happy to have the opportunity to talk about with you. I think people have unrealistic expectations, though. Yes, I think a single yoga class is beneficial. Like if you had the choice between doing one class and no class, then yes, do the class. But I think that some people come to yoga as like a panacea, like, oh, I'm going to do this one time and it's going to solve everything. And then they walk away, and really the only thing is they're going to be sore the next day. And then they're like, oh, I didn't like
Yeah.
that class because, it didn't solve my issues with my family, or it didn't solve the way I talk to myself. So that's why I like to emphasize to people that it is a practice, that if you want to reap the benefits of the practice, I'm going to tell you, you're going to have to do it more than once. You're going to have to do it more than 10 times. You're going to have to do it more than 50 times. And I mean, and that comes straight from the philosophy that a person's yoga practice becomes firmly established when it is repeated with enthusiasm over an extended period of time. So
That's a good ad, Marissa.
No one is going to promise, snap your fingers, one day of down dog is going to do it. But then I am open to engaging in conversations with students like, yes, this will change your life. Are you willing to spend months and years and commit to it?
Yeah, it does take a while. I think when I kind of made started to make a flip with it was at my local yoga studio. They have a challenge every February, and it's like 20 classes in like 28 days of February.
Wow.
And so you're doing all kind of classes. I'm practicing with the seniors. I'm practicing in my regular classes. I'm doing restorative. I'm just doing everything.
Yeah.
But I think going that frequently, just for that short period of time, it changed for me. It changed for me. I started to engage with it a different way. I think it builds confidence. I was always in the front because I'm always getting there just before the door goes shut. So
you're stuck
I'm
in the front
people in
row
the back.
because everybody's backing up.
Exactly. Everybody lines up from the back and I'm in the front. But at some point, mentally I have to tune that out and just be able to do my thing. And I think it did make a difference. But I'm glad you added that. You have to really get into it if you want to see a change. Let me ask.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say,
please.
because, to anyone listening, it's probably apparent by now that we've spoken extensively before. This is not our first time talking to each other. But it's just like the way that we're talking today in our conversation just reminds me of earlier conversations that you and I have had about wellness in the workplace. And so much of your career has revolved around that as well. And how, when I talk about yoga in a corporate setting, I try to be as discerning as possible when looking at opportunities. It's like, oh, did they get budget for a one-time event so that they can tell their supervisor, like, yes, boss, you gave us the money for one event and we did the yoga event and we checked the box. Yeah. What I'm really looking for is, is the team looking for something recurring? And I'm not saying it has to be 2 or 3 times a week, but I'm saying, are they actually looking to make a long-term investment into their employees' well-being, which I think is very different than offering a class one time.
Right. Yeah, there's a difference in planning out your wellness strategy to be the thing to do and really trying to engage your employees, improve their health, give them the support they need to show up in the organization, deal with the stress of the organization, do the work in the organization. All that definitely ties together. We've talked some about barriers, but I just want to touch on just a couple other things. And you've mentioned, I think, one specific, well, maybe a couple of barriers in the workplace. One being you got to have a place to change. And the other one is, you don't necessarily want to go to yoga class if you're practicing with people who are giving you grief the rest of the day. Any other things that you're seeing as barriers that maybe, things that employers could actually do to make the class more available to their employees?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to tell the employees as much as possible ahead of time about what to actually expect. And I actually have a lot of personal experience with this because on my own virtual platform, I hire other teachers to come teach. And, it's very typical when you're teaching for someone, they ask you for your bio and a headshot or a picture that they can send out in the marketing. But I always ask the people who come teach for me, can you please send 2 or 3 sentence description about the class itself? And that's what so many people forget to send me. And I think that the reason that's so important is because if that's not there, people will take whatever their presupposed notion of what yoga is. So if someone hears from their boss, oh, we're having yoga Thursday at the end of the day, and if someone thinks yoga is headstands and handstands, and they're like, oh, forget it, I'm not doing that, well, then they're not going to sign up for the session, and they're not bringing their sweatpants that day to do yoga. So I think it's really helpful when teachers can communicate with the corporate point person. So having a point person, contact person is really important to communicate what people can expect. So one thing I hear is people are like, I need to be able to touch my toes before I ever take Marissa's yoga class. When really, I tell whoever's coordinating the class, I say, if someone can't touch their toes and they come to my class, and then tell them to bend their knees. And then then problem solved. But the thing is, like,
there's lots of options in yoga.
But if I don't say that, and if the contact person doesn't communicate that, then the person who's worried, scared, and nervous, they won't know that. And then so they're not going to come to class. Yeah. So I think people ultimately need to know that, what is the yoga practice ultimately? It's living in the present moment in the body that we currently find ourselves in today. And so if that is something that we can somehow communicate either through the email or the newsletter or through the person, at the corporation who's been talking to the teacher, it's like, Marissa wants to meet you. Marissa wants to meet you and your colleagues and your teammates. Come as you are today. She'll give you modifications for each pose. If you get tired, you can do this. If you want more heat, you can do this. And most importantly, don't wear jeans.
Thanks for sharing that, really, because you're right. People do come with preconceived notions. I'll just tell a quick story. I have a friend of mine. I think he's practiced yoga probably 3 times. The first time he was with his wife on vacation, and they were actually doing headstands, and he actually just hated it. The second time I got him to go with the group that I was doing, and I had a yoga instructor come in, and he really liked her. And then the third time, we were away on a vacation type thing, and I led some chair yoga. And he says to me, I really enjoy that. Thanks for not doing yoga. so it's a lot about people's perceptions. And I'm glad you added that, because I'm not sure that, when organizations are putting out their wellness programs and getting things going, there's a lot of assumptions on what people know and don't know, and I can appreciate. Excellent. Well, we know that you used to teach Spanish to middle school students, but now you've moved over and, you're doing a tune and a line, and you're also obviously a yoga teacher and trainer. If we have just a second, tell us something about a tune and a line, because it's a podcast, but it's also a group.
It is. Thank you so much for the precious time to talk about what this is. A tune and the line is a women's online wellness community. I use the word wellness very broadly. As you could probably guess, it originally started as a series of in-person events that focused on the yoga asana practice. And I also teach a lot about the chakras, so the body's innate energy system, and that it's conveyed really well when combined with the yoga asana practice and in the context of those philosophical discussions. So that's how we got started. And so that was autumn 2019. And it was this great workshop series. And we had just wrapped it up and I was ready to launch it again, getting excited, getting people signed up. And then we all got locked in our homes, right? So, and here we are a year later. The silver lining of being locked in my apartment for a year was that, thanks to the internet and thanks to Zoom, we were able to continue. So right now it is 100% purely online community. But we have been able to grow into other areas like career, workshops for personal branding. We have weekly co-working sessions. We have sessions on Zoom where we do breakout sessions so that members can talk directly to each other. We have a Slack channel so that members can write and talk to each other all day long as a way to continue conversations. And what I'm really hoping for the future, and things are looking hopeful in terms of the reopening in 2021. I really plan on Attune and Align being a hybrid experience that will continue with weekly co-working sessions, that will continue with our twice weekly Zoom yoga. But as soon as we reopen, I'll be looking for opportunities to have us gathering in real spaces, as soon as it's safe for us to do so again. So I want it all, Sylvia. I want both. I want online and in real life.
That is really lovely, Marissa. I think particularly given the challenges that we've all gone through this year, just to, for you to be able to hold that community in that way and just provide a space for people, that's lovely.
I'm very grateful for it because as much as the members get out of it, I get so much out of it too, because that's my community. That's how I feel connected to other people. And so that was my main lifeline during the pandemic as well.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to build our own communities.
Mm-hmm.
You're very involved in a couple of things. If you weren't doing any of these things, what would you be doing?
This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And you know how I can get, so I'll keep it as succinct as possible. People ask me that all the time. Like, if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing instead? And I would say that question is impossible for me to answer, and here's why. It's because I believe that, a person's dharma, a person's like cosmic purpose, a person's purpose for living, I believe that it doesn't change. So for example, what I think changes is the outfits that we wear. So, when I was 11, I decided, I was raised in the church. So when I was 11, I decided I was going to become a Presbyterian minister.
Okay.
And then after that, I decided that I was going to be a language teacher. And then after that, I decided I would teach yoga. And then our paths crossed with our nutrition community. I decided I was going to teach nutrition. And so, I know I'm doing a terrible job of answering your question, because what I really see is that I'm actually doing the same thing all the time. I'm teaching in some capacity, and that I think really the only thing that will change and will probably continue to change throughout my life is like the actual curriculum or the outfit I'm wearing, right? Is it yoga pants or is it a chef's hat? But I think that my inner purpose and my driving desire to teach is what will always be the same.
Yeah. Excellent. That's a really interesting and thoughtful way that we can think about our careers and really how we show up in the world. All right. So we're coming to the end of the podcast. And at the end, I like to leave listeners with something that they can take forward with them. So Marissa, what is the one thing that you suggest that we can all do today to start engaging more in yoga? Or should I say yoga and community?
For that one, I would say head over to marissalavalette.com. So I'll just plug my website here. And as soon as you get there, there's going to be this pop-up that's going to hit you. And that's where I'd like you to leave your email address. And that way we can stay connected on this journey forward. And when you're on my list, you're the first to know of my weekly schedule and the week's offering. In all seriousness, though, what can people, I mean, that is serious, but what can people actually do today to deepen their yoga practice? I would say right now, as soon as you're done listening to this episode, grab a pillow from the couch, toss it on the floor, grab a notebook or a piece of paper, turn off the TV, turn off your phone, and journal for 5 minutes. And then sit for 5 minutes with your eyes closed, listening to your breath and your breathing. And don't expect anything to happen. Like, the sky is not going to open and, the planets are not going to align, but you will cultivate for yourself a really nice moment of calm and quiet.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Marissa. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your experience and your thoughts.
Thank you.
It's been very enlightening.
Thank you, Sylvia. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your amazing podcast.
Thank you for listening today. This podcast was edited by Terrence of 1015. That's TENONEFIVE.com. Notes for this podcast, as well as any websites and links that were mentioned today, can be found at reenvisionhealth.com. And please, if you liked what you heard, be sure to share this podcast or tell a friend.